How you going? I'm Mixy, and in this video I'm going to try to explain why I feel Bethesda stumbled with their latest release, Starfield. Starfield is the latest action RPG from Bethesda Game Studios, the same people who have previously brought you Skyrim and Fallout. 25 years in the making. Starfield has been one of the most anticipated games of 2023, especially considering the lackluster release schedule from Microsoft's first-party Xbox development studios. A lot is riding on this one. Set in the year 2330, mankind has left Earth behind and journeyed to the stars, but war never changes. Oops, sorry, wrong game. By the way, it has been confirmed that Starfield is not set in the same universe as the Fallout and Elder Scrolls games. You start Starfield as a miner on your first day with Argos extractors. You are tasked with retrieving a strange object that has been found buried in the rock. Upon touching what comes to be known simply as the artifact, you are rendered unconscious and shown a vision that leaves you with more questions than answers. Now granted unique abilities by the artifact, you are recruited by a mysterious group of explorers known as Constellation, and your journey among the stars begins. This is the first game that I've bought at the new standard price of $120 for AAA games, and it was quite a shock to my wallet. However, I have had great experience with prior Bethesda releases, so I was willing to make the purchase, if only from a purely dollars per hour perspective. However, they announced during the Starfield Direct that for just an extra $50 you could play the game 6 days early. Well, it was a big ask, but I pried open my wallet and spread my I bit the bullet. My most recent experience with Bethesda was a $70 copy of Fallout 76, so the almost $100 price difference was a hard pill to swallow, especially after the debacle that was Fallout 76. That thing was a turd and it sullied the name Bethesda and gaming in general. I played Starfield at 4K with an Intel i9 13900K CPU and an RTX 4090 GPU. To say that I was disappointed with the performance would be an understatement. The game asked for an SSD and I gave it one, a Samsung 980 Pro. Textures are low quality and the models are a mixed bag. Perhaps the biggest issue is the weird tint to the game, like there's constantly dust or fog in the air. Checking the display options, I was annoyed to find no field of view slider. I tend to get sick after an hour or two with anything less than 100-degree field of view, so when I started to feel clammy and nauseous I had to look up an INI file mod to set the FOV. In this day and age this should not be happening. I set the options to ultra/high with the exception of motion blur and depth of field. I tried FSR but I found it to add too much shimmer to distant objects and things like grills and fences. I later added a DLSS mod that improved things, but I was only getting 40 to 60 FPS in most areas. And for this level of graphical detail I would expect much higher numbers. I'm currently playing Red Dead Redemption 2 and that game is looking much better and running much more smoothly than Starfield ever did. That's not to say that the game has not improved over previous Bethesda games. Faces, while not perfect, are a vast improvement, at least when it comes to named NPCs. There is still a weird plastic quality to the faces, perhaps some subsurface scattering would help, but they are approaching the uncanny valley. Fallout 4's faces were worse, but they didn't trigger revulsion as much as these faces can. The same cannot be said for unnamed NPCs. These things look like abominations from the 7th circle of hell. Wild eyes that peer deep into your soul. Oh, I know what you did on Parama 3. Eyelids that reveal the eyeball once closed. Plasticky skin like a Gen 1 synth. It feels like I'm watching an episode of Reboot. These unnamed NPCs also exhibit some of the most rudimentary behavioural routines. Walking predefined paths, deviating only to clumsily navigate around another similarly dazed NPC who just happens to have crossed their path. Once the end of the path has been reached, they pull a David Copperfield and zip! The object in their hand disappears, only to return just as sudden and the route is paced again. The NPCs aren't the only ones who have issues navigating the map, as the in-game version is as much use as a pimple on a pumpkin. Just look at this thing. The only information it provides is which cardinal direction the different points of interest can be found. Whether that is of any use is anyone's guess, as there are times when the direct route is not possible. Perhaps it's upstairs, or underground. Well, too bad, you're not getting any more information. The map isn't the only menu item to have glaring issues. The inventory is absolutely deplorable. I've seen better UI on Commodore 64s. So little detail, so few options. You'll find that Digipix, a vital tool that replaces bobby pins and lockpicks, is now in the miscellaneous category alongside random junk. Junk is useless, by the way. It serves only as clutter and a sellable item. No breaking down for crafting here. The one addition that I appreciate is the new section, which shows items you have gained since you last went into your UI. However, even this is flawed, as if you open your inventory and realise, oh yeah, I have some stuff that I need to sell/store. The next time you open it at a store or a container, the new section is no longer available. It's a one-time deal. Speaking of menus, food is now practically useless. Most food items heal for 3 to 5 points of health. This can be upgraded in skills, but it is a waste of time considering the much more urgent weapon-based skills that you will want to upgrade first. The menus are also super slow and nested. Getting out of the inventory is not just a simple tab, but 3 tabs or a 3-second long tab hold. Across 75 hours of gameplay, I only held tab around 7 times. Instead, I trilled the tab button while cursing the UI designers. There is also an animation and fade for each level of the menu, so even a quick in and out is much longer than it needs to be. Thankfully, mods can remedy this, but it shouldn't even be the case. An option for instant menus would be good. And I suggest you install that fast menu mod, because you'll be spending a lot of your time in menus. Encumbrance is back, meaning you'll be constantly emptying your inventory of non-essential items. Thankfully, junk, as mentioned earlier, is not useful in the slightest, so my tip is to not pick up anything that doesn't have flavor text. Sadly, stripping weapons of ammo is returning from Fallout 4. If you kill an enemy and take their ammo, you're only getting half the ammo. Most of it is still held in their weapon. Looting the weapon will strip the ammo from the magazine and you can now ditch the empty weapon. Another little annoyance that I could do without. Weapon variety is good, although I didn't try melee as it looks like a poor option compared to the ranged weapons. There are enough varieties of weapons to allow you to mix and match, although I found the best tactic was to pick 3 or 4 weapons and buy the vendors out of ammo at every town. Ammo is weightless, so there's no penalty for stocking up on multiple thousands of rounds. Weapon modification has taken a step backwards as you cannot take an attachment from one gun and put it on another. I had a nice legendary rifle that was doing serious damage but lacked a larger magazine. I found a non-legendary version with an extended magazine and lugged it excitedly back to my ship to modify it. Imagine my shock when removing the magazine destroyed it. I couldn't create an extended magazine for my legendary weapon as I did not spec my character into weapon crafting, so I went without. Modifying your ship was one of the big selling points of Starfield, and I can safely say that it did not interest me in the slightest. I attempted to do some modification, but again, anything I would want to apply is locked behind a skill that I'm not invested in. There are requirements for the ship in order to take certain components. For example, I wanted more storage. Adding more storage meant my engines were too weak to propel the ship. Okay, I'll just add bigger, better engines. Not without upgrading the reactor, you won't. It needs more power, Captain. Okay, let me upgrade the reactor too. I have 10 times the required amount of money. Sorry, you need to have shipbuilding level 2 to add that reactor. I just told them to forget it and use the upgrade feature that allows for slight modifications. The controls for the shipbuilder on PC are a nightmare anyway. Adding a component adds it into the 3D space beside your ship, but the slightest movement of my mouse sends it careening into the far distance, and any attempt to bring it closer merely brings it max close times infinity and ends up being behind your camera and out of sight. It's not really something I care enough about to really attempt to get to grips with it. I simply stole a ship from some pirates, and that was more than enough to get me through to the end of the game on normal difficulty. The space flight was one of the big letdowns in Starfield. Less a spaceship and more a fast travel point come mobile workspace. Most travelling is done through menus. You cannot leave a planet without a load screen. You can move to orbit, and if the active quest is the next destination, you can point your ship in the right direction and jump to it. If not, you are entering a menu whether you like it or not. It comes down to personal taste. Open a menu and select travel to location, or select an active quest and exit the menu to select the destination in 3D space. The latter sounds more immersive, but it rapidly becomes a hassle that I could do without. When entering a system, you can have a few things happen. If the system is controlled by one of the main factions, they will scan you for illegal goods. This becomes an annoyance because I picked up some contraband accidentally. I didn't even know I had it, and suddenly I'm a bad guy. Oh well, I'll just turn myself in. But you stand a chance to be roped into a couple of hours long side quest if you do. It's fine if you're looking for something to do, but annoying if you're trying to tick off an almost complete quest. Another thing that can happen is hostile enemies, as opposed to friendly enemies, spawn in space. I didn't enjoy these encounters and found the entire thing to be more of an annoyance than adding to my experience. However, this is very subjective. I can't shake the feeling that I'm sitting stationary and the game is moving the other craft around my location. I never got a feeling of true movement. The game will not allow you to fast travel directly to locations with an airlock. You are required to jump to the planet they are orbiting. Then, you will be placed around 1,000 meters from your destination. You then have to manually fly to within 500 meters and then the docking prompt will appear. Likewise, you cannot fast travel from within the dock location. You instead need to walk back to your ship, and once in the cockpit, undock, then you may fast travel. This is excruciating near the end of the game where you, spoilers, travel the settled systems looking for Starborn powers. These are basically like unlocking shouts in Skyrim, except in that vastly superior game you get to clear a cool dungeon first, or battle a dragon priest. In Starfield, you simply ask one of the members of Constellation where the location is, travel to that planet, locate the temple, which stands out like a sore thumb and is visible most of the time in the landing cutscene, and then perform the most basic jetpack obstacle course in the history of mankind. All the while the music is swelling like it's some sort of spine-tingling moment. It's not. It's boring and repetitive. Once you unlock the power, you get another vision and awaken outside the temple and are assaulted by a high-level Starborn enemy. They die ridiculously easy, and to add insult to injury, they disappear in a puff of glitter and leave no loot. About the only time they pose a challenge is at night, because they can turn invisible and appear as a shimmering area against the background. This is made 100 times worse by the scopes in this game, having black crosshairs which do not show up against the blackness of space. It's terrible design. This space treasure hunt would maybe be bearable if not for the constant menus and loading screens. You will spend 1/3 of your playthrough in menus, 1/3 in loading screens, and the other third interacting in 3D space. It seems that while faster than light travel was developed, the innovation did not apply to telecommunications. You cannot call someone for more information, you need to be face to face. Sure, you can hail them when nearby, but all they do is allow you permission to dock. I hope you enjoy the docking animation because you'll be seeing it a lot. Oh, and the W key to move forward sometimes seems not to respond for a second or two after loading a new area or leaving a menu. You need to get into the habit of lifting your finger and placing it down again. The game doesn't eventually realise that you have it depressed, it requires a full new press. Fix this please. When I began my playthrough, I was looking forward to all the things I would find. I went to Crete, the planet that made up a large proportion of the gameplay reveal, and instead of leaving the planet when the lab was cleared, I stuck around for a little exploring. Exploring starts by landing on a planet. In this example, I was already on the planet's surface. Pulling out the scanner shows symbols on the horizon for any points of interest within 1,000 meters. This is where exploration begins to take a bit of a nosedive. If the closest point of interest is 800 meters away, you better get jogging. You cannot get back in your ship and fly over to it. That's just not how the game works. And this is where I feel choosing space was a bad design choice. So you start running over to the point of interest, let's say it's a cave. You run and your oxygen gets used up quicker due to the exertion. Once the white oxygen meter is depleted, the red carbon dioxide meter starts filling. Once it is full, you'll take damage if you continue. You can't die, but it makes you susceptible to enemy attacks. It also blurs your vision. In the case of the cave, you hold W for 3 or so minutes and then enter the cave. It's empty except for a few mineral deposits. Whatever. On to the next POI. Again, holding W and watching the oxygen meter, resting when necessary. 3 minutes later you arrive. It's an observation tower with a single storage container and not much else of interest. Onward and upward. 3 more minutes of holding W and you come across a pirate base. However, as everyone in space is wearing spacesuits, you have no idea if they're enemies or if they're friendly. Not until you get within detection range. So you run closer. Stop and crouch. Run closer again. Stop and crouch. Still not detected. Run closer once more. Now your crosshairs are red. They can begin to detect you and they're hostile. What follows is a pretty enjoyable standard Bethesda shooter RPG. Sneak around, hack terminals, loot the bodies, turn robots against their masters. Pretty good fun for about 30 minutes. Things are going pretty well. You finish up, scan the next POI, and it's just another cave. I'll head back and continue on the main quest. I followed this process for 3 or 4 planets while following the main quest. They asked me to go somewhere, I go there, and while I'm on the planet I have a look around. Pretty enjoyable for about 10 or so hours. However, you start getting the feeling of familiarity. I had it when I came across the second Advanced Cryo Lab. I noticed that it seemed familiar, but I was okay with them reusing a base. They were probably constructed off-world in modules and constructed in place to save time and money for the military. I decided to do a side quest joining the Wiki Wild Wild West faction known as the Freestar Rangers. Well, I was roped into it when I went to a killer and helped them with a bank robbery. So they asked me to do a mission from the mission board to show that I've got what it takes. I was to go kill a bandit in an abandoned cryo lab on a nearby planet. So I arrive and it's the same. I'm starting to pay attention now. The enemies are in the same spot. The loot is in the same spot. The dead scientists have the same notes on them telling them that the lab is being shut down and where the next assignment is located. Halfway through there's a locked door, and I remember that there was a vent above me last time, with a dead scientist hanging out of it with the key. Yep, there he is. This was the end of my exploration. I wasn't too sad. The exploration was boring anyway. In previous Bethesda games you would use fast travel to get yourself to a location nearby and then walk the remaining couple of 100 meters. But in those games it was over hilly terrain with the view blocked by trees. In Starfield it's much more frequently flat terrain. Occasionally you get a tropical or temperate world that makes it more enjoyable to traverse, but you know you're just following the quest marker. People say, turn off the quest marker, but the journal entries are so short that there's not enough detail to use to find your way. Morrowind had a quest log that said things like, head south of Balmora, halfway to Vivek you'll cross a bridge. Just past the bridge are 3 large boulders. Leave the path and head west until you come to a cave. The book I require is being held by a bandit who is holed up within. Return the book to me when you have obtained it. Sure, sometimes you get lost, and just how big are the 3 large boulders, but you could find your way. Starfield just says, I need to go to planet 3S and talk to Steve. That's useless. Skyrim and Fallout would also distract you with hidden caves, secondary towns, small skirmishes, all of which would reward exploration. Starfield gives the illusion of rewarding exploration, but actually punishes you for it. It forces you into a boring loop of land, scan, run, repeat, until you realise you've exhausted the limited POI pool. I think it would have held the illusion longer if they had constructed POIs from individual modules rather than having them all be prefabs. For example, they could pick from 5 entryways, 5 hallways, 5 bedrooms, 5 kitchens, and 5 workshops. And each of these could be randomised internally, such as having the bed on the left of the room, on the right, bunks, a double bed, a small table, a large table, no table. But I guess that's just Fantasyland. Anyway, exploration in Starfield is a pale imitation of Elder Scrolls and Fallout, and people coming from those franchises will be disappointed. On the topic of building, I attempted to make an outpost in order to secure a reliable supply of ship parts. The only way to repair your ship mid-battle. Turns out I was wasting my time as you cannot make ship parts in-game. Oh well, I only spent a couple of hours attempting to get an outpost or 2 off the ground. I stopped once I realised that I would need to dedicate skill points to unlocking the ability to make anything more than a basic shack. I tried to at least create a place to store my excess resources to facilitate weapon modification, but the storage containers were so pathetic that it just seemed pointless from the get-go. Check out these solid item containers. They're used for solids like rocks and minerals. They're massive, and they hold a grand total of 75 units each. Pathetic. And this storage tub I made, 75 as well. I ended up just dumping everything on the ground. I'm not going to be bothered with the outposts. Still managed to breeze through the game. You can check out the entire 75-hour playthrough on my other channel, MicksysPCGaming Live, link below. I can't write a review of a Bethesda game and not mention the companions. They're back, and they're just as poorly written as ever. There's 4 companions with Constellation: Sarah, Andraja, Barrett, and Vesco. Sam I guess counts, but I see him as more of a Freestar Ranger. Others will join you for specific missions. I've only cared enough to find one other companion in the Crimson Fleet, but he was so poorly written I ignored him. Hey, you want to kill the boss? What? No, I was just joking. Unless... You can recruit the companions to your ship or outposts, but I'd recommend sending them far away. They seem to be on a 10-second timer to repeat one of 4 possible lines. If Lynn asks me if there's any mining on the schedule one more time... Companions seem to have a bug where they speak directly into your ear canal even though they're 500 meters behind you fighting an alien squid. Sometimes they will talk to you at full volume while sneaking, really breaking the immersion. Additionally, they will break cover to navigate closer to your position and walk directly in front of the person you're sneaking around. Sarah will get stuck on the outside of an airlock as her follow distance was too large. Then, when I'm sneaking around inside a building, she'll teleport into the next room and start a firefight with the enemies I was approaching. I rocked Sarah as she was the best to look at. Shallow, I know. Sarah will like you when you are kind and honourable. She hates it if you offer revenge as an option, although you wouldn't know it if you hurt her in battle. She's a stone cold crazy killer. Easy girl. We ended up getting married. The courtship process was bizarre. The game kept trying to get me to flirt with her when she had just finished spilling her guts to me about her guilt stemming from people dying under her command. "Oh, Sarah, that's so sad. But you need to stop blaming yourself. You did all you could." "Now how about a smooch, baby?" Even I was creeped out a little. The game auto-fills your pronouns. I chose body type 1, masculine. Hey, we're number 1, baby. And walk style A. We're the A grade. You can change them to he, him, she, her, or they, them. Todd pointed this out and said that the NPCs would even refer to you by your preferred pronouns. Now, I don't care about this stuff. I see some fuss has been made about it recently, and the surrounding context has been ignored. I didn't really notice anyone use my pronouns. What I did notice was their glaring omission when I married Sarah. All of the wedding vows were gender neutral. It really stood out. It was stuff like, "Do you, Sarah, take this person to be your partner?" And it ended with, "I now pronounce you life partners." It was so clumsy. How hard would it be to have that voice actor do 4 more lines? I imagine if you were trans and they used gender-neutral pronouns after you specifically told them, it would be upsetting. But hey, maybe I'm sticking my nose where it's not wanted. On our honeymoon, we took a trip to the Red Mile. Sarah was adamant that anyone who participated was a dead-set drongo, but it was part of a quest chain, so I did it anyway. And she participated with gusto. But Red Mile? More like Z Mile, because it almost put me to sleep. Here is the real-time running for my second Red Mile. Pretty underwhelming. I thought it was going to be a long corridor filled with Running Man style combatants that gave the place a Red Mile name due to its length and the fact the floor and walls were covered with blood. But nope, it's a big empty area with some lizards that shoot balls of weak poison at you. How underwhelming. I did experience a bug here where the host of the Red Mile would not start proceedings. She just stood there instead of heading to the stage. I was lucky. I reloaded from the autosave when I entered the building. I have read about people who left to see if unloading the area would reset her, only to find that now they have a new autosave after the bug. Autosave was a bit weird at times. It seems to only autosave when you enter an area, provided there's no combat. I did a mission, got promoted and had a discussion with my bosses, then fast travelled to another star system and was attacked. They outnumbered me and I was killed. So when the autosave was loaded, it was 20 minutes back when I entered the building to report my last successful mission. I had to sit through the debrief, promotion and new mission briefing again. I found the main quest to be pretty uninteresting. Previous games have main quests around saving the world or finding a lost family member, things that really urge you towards completion. This one was more of a philosophical quest that never truly had me excited to find out more. I felt if someone else did it, or it was never solved, I wouldn't mind. And I can't help but feel that the origins of the artifacts is never truly explained. They explain where we found the first one and why we're looking for them, but we never truly hear the origins. Was it aliens? Was it God? Was it time travelers? I started New Game Plus, but stopped as soon as I entered Constellation. I just wasn't invested in another playthrough. Spoiler alert, New Game Plus takes you back to before you arrive at Constellation early in the main story. You keep your powers and skills but lose your inventory, and no one knows who you are. I could not be bothered unlocking the remaining powers and upgrading my existing ones. I also didn't want to do the main quest again. By this point, I was glad it was over. Starfield has improved a number of aspects when compared to previous Bethesda games. Terrain generation and facial modelling are both standouts, with the facial animation and lighting requiring work. The introduction of spaceships was an interesting concept, poorly executed. Spaceships feel more like a mini-game than a mode of transport. I wish instead that planet-side traversal was improved with a hoverbike or a buggy. The lack of a compelling narrative required me to push myself to complete the main quest, if only so I could say that I finished the game. The fact that the gameplay is split into thirds with almost equal amounts of play, menus and loading screens really hurt the experience. When the gameplay hits, it hits well enough. It's just too thinly spread. I feel Bethesda would have benefited from a more grounded experience, such as a single planet or maybe a single solar system. Having so many star systems just added extra busy work that was not very enjoyable. Starfield is a 7 out of 10 game for me, just behind Fallout 4 and far behind Skyrim. The sense of exploration that I love so much is not present in large enough quantities. I suggest that everyone should at least try it on Game Pass, but I can't recommend it at the full purchase price. Onward to Elder Scrolls 6. I hope they continue to improve on the facial modelling and landscape generation advances they have made here. Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, please consider subscribing. I release reviews occasionally when time allows, and a thumbs up would be a big motivator for further reviews. If you didn't like it, feel free to leave a thumbs down and let me know how I can improve in the comments below. Anyway, I'm Mixy, thanks for your time, and have a good one.